Hey there YouTube, Travis here, and we're back exploring some of the mysteries of my 1910 fixer house. So I'm partway through doing a demo job on some of these cabinets here. These cabinets, which were painted a lovely green and orange color originally, and I'm finding some things that are giving me a couple more clues about the history of this property. No, it's nothing as exciting as that newspaper I found under the bathroom floorboards during that renovation from like 1915. That was probably the crown jewel of things I found in this house, but a little bit more information about kind of some of the work that was done in the past. So to very briefly talk about wiring, pretty much the entire house is wired up with this stuff right here, which is just your cloth or asphalt slicked Romex. It's just a 2-wire conductor from the 1960s or 70s. When I moved into the property, there was a nice Federal Pacific electrical panel. Now I have a nice modern panel with good square D breakers, and all that wiring goes into junction boxes, and I've been slowly replacing the old wiring with nice modern 14 and 12 gauge Romex, the yellow and the white, as I go when I have time. So there's still some left, and some of it goes up through the walls, and it's going to be really difficult to access. I'll probably end up abandoning it and just running fresh Romex when I get all that replaced. But most of the important wiring has been swapped out with wiring that has a ground conductor in it, which is great. And I always assumed that that was some of the earliest wiring in the house. I've not found any knob and tube wiring, which would have been the wiring available when the house was built in 1910. I have found some holes, definitely lots of holes that have no wires and no plumbing in them, so I assumed there was some older wiring, but I found no evidence of it. That is, until today. So there it is in all its glory. It has been abandoned, the wiring is cut, but those are the only 2 knobs, so porcelain knobs. The porcelain tubes would go through the wood. I just got 2 little pieces there, so I'm going to get those unbolted and kind of keep them somewhere where I can keep an eye on it. But it kind of confirms a couple things for me. I knew that this house had a big renovation back in the probably early 1970s, maybe late 60s. And when they redid the wiring, I mean, they did a darn good job. You can see there's a holder there and a hole. So I found evidence, and I found evidence in the bathroom too that there used to be a different wiring configuration. But this is the only knob and tube I found, so they really went through and ripped it all out instead of just abandoning it. That's it. I've torn down ceilings in the bedroom down here, the whole bathroom reno, and found nothing. So I actually found some knob and tube. That's pretty cool. I'm very happy that it is abandoned. Now, I pointed this out in the last video, but there is obviously a plumbing stack right here, and there's a little hole in the wall behind it, which just today goes out into a stairwell. So this is my stairwell. I fully believe, though, that that was probably part of the 70s renovation. This was probably a primitive entrance. I think this was probably a half basement to start out with, and then eventually it was dug down and more modern concrete poured. But it's interesting. I do believe the configuration of this house was totally different because we have a drain right there. And then I doubt it's going to come up on camera, but there's actually a hole right here behind this piece of modern ABS, obviously. That was not, and this was all like a steel drain line when I moved in, but it was not hooked up to anything. So I think we either had a yard drain, because this goes right to the outside, which is not uncommon for this area, or we just had a different configuration for things like, you know, upstairs plumbing or the kitchen. So I definitely think the house has been added on to. This is obviously a wall. This is the crawl space. Above us, we can see the original subfloor, and that white is actually like leftover concrete from when the house was formed that just permanently discolored those boards. But when we get to the wall right here, the kitchen continues, and there's modern plywood subfloor there. So I feel pretty confident that originally the house was a little bit smaller and had a different layout. It's kind of just neat discovering these things as you go. So yes, as mentioned, I'm saying goodbye to these cabinets. Originally, I thought that they could be original to the house, but upon closer inspection, there's a couple of clues that they're definitely not. This is your modern, well, I say modern in quotes, but dimensional lumber. So it is not the full 2-inch 2x4, which is the studs of the house, which would have come from like an old growth forest. This is just 70s lumber. It's actually like tongue and groove hardwood up here at the top. Unfortunately, it's been painted in this hideous green and orange color, and probably a good chance that that's a lead-based paint given the age of it. So what I'm doing here, I've learned my lessons doing demos. Down over here, I have my reciprocating saw and my multi-tool, but I haven't used them yet. I've just been going slow, using a cat's paw and a hammer and a crowbar, and I've just been pulling out nails and just deconstructing this one piece at a time and walking it out the door. You know, there's a ton of nails in here. In fact, they're using like the big 4-inch nails that I've seen on like toenailing the actual studs. So it's been fun. It's been a workout, but overall it's been rewarding. I'm going to replace this with some modern shelving where I can just put your typical storage bin. It'll be a little bit cleaner. The shelves had to go. I'm finding a lot of rat droppings hidden around in them. So I've been masking up. I've been vacuuming a ton. It's all really old, dried stuff. The former owners of this house, not the most clean. So unfortunately, there's a lot of that, but I've been, you know, going slow, taking my time. The other real reason is at one point they had a water issue, as you can see. There's a lot of efflorescence here, which is actually when water comes through a concrete wall, it just pulls all the salts with it, and you get this nice, awful looking damage to the skim coat on this wall. So one of my next projects, the water issue has been long mitigated, but I'll be chipping out all the bad and then reskimming this wall and a couple other small pieces in the basement. Like up here, it's not a bad thing necessarily, but you see honeycombing because that wall is probably original. When this house was built in 1910, they don't have the nice like vibrators that actually vibrate up the concrete and fill all the air gaps, and they were just using whatever kind of materials they could get. So this is like river rock and stuff that was harvested. It's pretty neat. The block wall here is obviously newer, but that's original. So we'll all get a nice skim coat over all this and it'll look nice, and we'll build out a nice modern, simple 2x4 and plywood shelving, and we'll be all set. So obviously the whole basement looks different. I'm usually not a fan of painting basement floors, even with the appropriate paint. However, this floor already had a nice yellow paint job on the bottom of it, so I didn't have much choice. I, covered it with some of the nicest paint that I could find, meant for basement floors, and it's been holding up pretty well. We said goodbye to the orange on the walls here, and probably the saddest thing is we said goodbye to the original furnace to the house. I kind of agonized over this decision. The furnace had been here for 100+ years. It still functioned great. Again, it was a octopus furnace. Originally would have just been, no electricity, would have burned either coal or possibly sawdust. There is a coal chute on the other side of the house. Converted to burn oil in the 1950s. And honestly, I loved the simplicity of it. I really did. I actually fixed it at one point. I had to clean the photo, oh gosh, what's it called? Little eye in there that sees if the pilot light is lit, and bleed the line. And it's funny, there's like moped parts used in your furnace that referenced an atomizer. I found it interesting. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I really wanted air conditioning, which I could not have with that system. It was an oil burner, so oil is much more expensive than natural gas, which is what this high efficiency furnace runs. And additionally, I'm dealing with, filling an oil tank that was buried in my backyard in the 1950s. So it's approaching 70 years old and getting close to end of service life. It wasn't leaking yet, but I really didn't want to risk it any further. So unfortunately, we said goodbye to the furnace, which I absolutely believe they built the house around. It took 2 technicians from a local HVAC shop, like 2 or 3 days, and 2 whole bottles of oxyacetylene for their torches to cut it all up and get it out. But they did a phenomenal job. We reused a lot of the plumbing, or the ductwork, I should say, and I've been very satisfied with the performance of this high efficiency furnace and AC unit. It's not all sad though, because I did keep this as a memento. Now, I've also had interest on the bathroom renovation, which has actually been complete for about 2 years now. Originally, we saw me ripping out all the lath and plaster wall, getting this down to the studs for some total repipe and plumbing, because originally the shower was right here. Toilet was more or less in the same position, and the sink was right here, but this new layout, and again, I'm going for simplicity here. We have a really simple vanity here. Nice, actually it's the toilet that came with the house. It happens to be a 1.28 gallon flush and it's performed excellent. And then I went with a fiberglass surround tub. Again, budget, simplicity, doing absolutely everything in my power to prevent water damage. I'm still forever scarred from all the subfloor and the multiple layers of floor in this bathroom. Got a nice big powerful fan to pull everything out. Nice new frosted glass window. Overall, I'm really happy to have a nice, modern, clean bathroom to use. So it all turned out well. It was a ton of work getting it to this point though, and again, I found some really interesting things about the house back when I was doing that renovation. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention, I had the whole house repiped with PEX Type A, the expansion type PEX. Got rid of all of the galvanized steel water lines, which, just like all the ones you see online, they were really corroded almost all the way through. So glad I'm not drinking out of that anymore. And then some of the drain piping replaced with modern ABS, especially all the drain piping for that bathroom we were just in. All right there, YouTube. Well, hope you enjoyed this little update. I'm going to get back to my cabinet demo. Until next time.